Another key indicator is sudden change in social group and peer group. We see this quite a lot. So where maybe a child is being exploited, their exploiters are actually trying to really sort of break down the links that they've got to their support systems, their family networks, their friendships, their existing peer groups, in order to sort of indoctrinate them into a gang affiliation, a gang network, or into a exploitation ring as well. So they become isolated from all protective factors and reliant on those individuals that are exploiting them as well. But of course, what we know in teenagers, I've got a teenager myself, is that their friendship groups shift and change all the time. So that can be a normal part of their development. But again, it's about being professionally curious. And what's really important is about peer mapping as well. It wasn't the plan to talk about that today, but I think it's important to raise the importance of peer mapping. And what I mean by that is really sort of having knowledge and understanding and awareness of a child's peer network. Who are those highly influential peer influences in their lives? And actually, are those relationships healthy and pro-social? Or are they actually formed in problematic environments and spaces? And do we have concerns about those links and relationships and those peer networks that they're part of? We talked a little bit already about isolation, but also becoming really secretive. Again, this can be part of normal sort of teenage behaviour, but if a child is becoming more withdrawn, is sometimes quite open normally and ordinarily, but then do become quite secretive, and if you sort of try to talk to them and they become sort of quite hostile, then it could be, again, a sign of exploitation. I'll pause there, just see if there's any kind of comment, anything that anybody wants to add at this point. I'll just check the chat too.
Sorry, Nikki, I'm back now.
That's all right, Ted. I was just checking the chat, see if there was.
I was just seeing Jane. Cannabis use in of the biggest grey areas in the youth work sector. Our relationships with young people are more informal than other professionals, but we're bound to the same safeguarding procedures. Are we to report every use of cannabis we know of? Where's the lines? As a sector, we should be raising the issue at a national level to National Youth Agency, NYA, for more training and clarity on this issue. Sorry, was multitasking. Got the message. Thank you, Jade.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point of raising this as a national issue is really, really important. I know the Children's Commissioner has got concerns about young person substance misuse and the fact that actually, you know, public health budgets have been slashed, and that means that provision specialist support services for young people who misuse substances, whether that be cannabis or anything else, are not always available. And typically what we see, I've just done a piece of review work in Wolverhampton, and you know, we kind of see how there are quite small numbers of young people that are receiving specialist support for substance misuse, even though cannabis use, substance misuse in young people is known to be really high. And that's not unique to Wolverhampton, by the way. That's that can be reflected everywhere nationally, certainly where I've been and worked in other areas. Often local areas don't have a young person's substance misuse strategy, so it tends to be really adult centric, so it doesn't really kind of recognise the interface between substance misuse and exploitation.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a real distinct issue. I think we can't just bung it into the adults arena. But in terms of the question, the point that Jane raised about, do we report every single incident of cannabis use? I don't think there's the capacity to do that. And even if you did, service provision isn't there. But I think it's really important that where you've got children who are misusing substances, young people that are using cannabis, that in every single case we're professionally curious as to why, that we're just not accepting of it, that we ask those questions, that we know where we can signpost children to support services locally, and that we're persistent in trying to sort of address their substance misuse and support them to seek additional support. And if we've got any concerns about, you know, exploitation and abuse linked to their substance misuse, then of course, you know, your safeguarding procedures and arrangements would kick in there, as Jane's already sort of alluded to. So I think the main thing is about, in every case, we wouldn't necessarily report every case, because also as well, children who misuse cannabis and are signposted to support services, a lot of drug services will only work with that child if they've given consent. So actually just sort of blanket signposting without doing any kind of work to understand that child's perspective, issues attached to their substance misuse, is just going to generate a lot of referrals to services where they've not consented to, and then they won't get the support anyway. So I think it's really important that within every case we're professionally curious first and foremost. That was a really waffly sort of response to the questions raised by Jane.
It was a good response. But if anybody else that you know, wants to kind of come back on that particular issue, or yourself, I think it was Jane that was asking, then go ahead and we'll see if we can explore it a little bit further. I think it's it's also like the convergence, isn't it? It's like when it crosses over with other issues, and then there's concerns around other issues also. But that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be challenging young people who, you know, we know to be, you know, engaging in substance misuse or alcohol. Again, you know, all the same, you know, again, we can have, and having that youth work background, I completely understand where Jane's kind of coming from, you know, many times even on outreach and detached youth work, and, you know, we're in young people's spaces, and, you know, for us to start waving fingers and telling them about themselves and their substance misuse might not be the best practice that's going to help us to build that relationship. But, you know, I think one of the things that, you know, I certainly do with our team is kind of, you know, we kind of work out what's going to be acceptable versus what's not acceptable, and when to engage and when not to engage. So again, if young people are kind of engaging in substance misuse, then we probably just say, well, criminal activity, you know, we'll just have a policy of we won't engage with you at this particular stage, and try and maybe just a high and by and keep it moving, and engage with you at a different time. But it is a very difficult balance when you're, you know, you're a youth worker and you're trying to engage in the world of young people in order to become that trusted adult, so you can have these conversations with them, which means that, you know, ultimately you might not be challenging them straight away, not until you have that relationship built with them in the first place.
It's all about that rapport building, isn't it? And I think non-judgment as well.
Yes.
Because actually, if you're sort of going in, as you say, finger wagging, you know, this is legal, you shouldn't be doing it, this is going to rot your brain, it's going to switch them off. But actually, you know, build that rapport, just dropping those questions about, I mean, for me, one of the biggest bugbears for me is when there's young people using cannabis and there's no exploration of how they're funding it.
Yes.
Because that for me is when we're overlooking that exploitative link. Then actually, if you've got a young person who's saying, well, I'm not offending to pay for it, but so-and-so is giving it me for free, then there's an opportunity there for a bit of education as well about debt bondage. Is anything really free in life? Yes. You know, this can happen. We've seen this happen. Just be aware of it. And if you've got any worries, any concerns, let us know. We can support. Yes. You know, through those sort of safe, supportive, ongoing conversations, just dropping those little kind of educative nuggets, I suppose, and then they go away and they mull it over, think about it, and 9 times out of 10 they come back and ask you more questions. So I think there's a skilled way to do it, and I think that youth workers are so skilled at that. And actually those statutory roles learn a lot from that. So yeah.